Chapter 1. The Last Game. The basement of the Wheeler house was warm and bright. 4 boys sat around a table covered in paper, dice, and small plastic figures. Empty bottles of cola stood on the floor near their chairs. A hand-drawn map lay in the center of the table. It had taken weeks to make. Mike Wheeler leaned forward over the table. His eyes were wide with excitement. He was the dungeon master. That meant he controlled the story of their game. "You have entered the lair of the Demogorgon," he said in a low, dramatic voice. 12 years you have fought, and now the most dangerous creature in the realm stands before you. Dustin Henderson grabbed his dice nervously. He was a round-faced boy with a bright, open smile. "I roll for attack," he said loudly. 7, said Lucas Sinclair, reading the number on the dice. Lucas was calm and serious. He folded his arms. "That's not enough. We're going to die." "We are not going to die," said Will Byers quietly. Will was the smallest of the 4 boys. He had a gentle face and soft brown eyes. He picked up a different dice. "I cast a protection spell. Fireball." Mike looked at the dice Will rolled. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked up at the group. 11, he said slowly. The boys stared at him. "Fireball 11?" Dustin asked. "The Demogorgon has been hit," said Mike. He paused again. "But he is still standing." "Oh, no," said Lucas. "He turns toward the party," said Mike. His voice dropped even lower. "He chooses his next victim. He raises one claw." "Mr. Henderson! Dustin!" A woman's voice came from the top of the stairs. All 4 boys turned their heads. "It's my mom," said Dustin. He looked annoyed. "It's 1 in the morning," he explained. "You have to go," said Mike. He sounded disappointed. "We were so close," said Dustin. He stood up and gathered his things slowly. Lucas pulled on his jacket. "We can finish on Saturday." "If the Demogorgon doesn't finish us first," said Will with a small smile. The boys climbed the stairs and came out into the cold night air. The sky was dark and full of stars. Their breath made small clouds of white mist in front of their faces. "Okay," said Mike. "Everybody go straight home." He looked at Will seriously. "Will, you okay to ride alone?" "I go past your house every day," said Will. He laughed a little. "I'll be fine, Mike." "Call me when you get home." "You sound like my mother," said Will. Dustin laughed. Lucas rolled his eyes. The boys got on their bikes and rode off in different directions. Their lights disappeared slowly into the dark road. Will's was the last light to vanish into the night. Chapter 2. Something in the Dark. Will Byers pedaled hard down Mirkwood Road. That was what the boys called it. It was a long, dark road that went through the woods. Tall trees stood close together on both sides. Their bare branches reached up into the sky like long fingers. Will felt the cold air on his face. He was tired, but he was happy. He thought about the game. He thought about how close they had come to defeating the Demogorgon. Then something caught his eye. He looked in his mirror and stopped pedaling. There was a shape on the road behind him. It was large. It was very still. And it did not look like an animal Will had ever seen. Will's hands tightened on the handlebars. His mouth went dry. He pedaled faster. He looked back again. The shape moved. Will made a sound, not quite a scream, not quite a word. He turned the handlebars sharply and rode off the road into the trees. His wheels slid on the wet leaves. His bike crashed against something hard. Will fell. He lay on the ground for a second. His hands were shaking. His knee hurt. The trees were silent around him. He got up slowly and looked behind him. Nothing, only dark trees, only the cold wind. Will began to run. Chapter 3. The Shed. Will reached his house at the end of the road. He ran through the garden toward the front door. His hands could barely hold his keys. He knocked the door, then dropped the keys, then picked them up again. "Mom?" he called. His voice was small and frightened. "Jonathan." The house was quiet. His mother was not home from work yet. His brother was still out. All the lights were off. Will walked slowly to the kitchen. He picked up the telephone. His fingers were still shaking as he tried to dial. The line made a strange sound. It was not like a normal telephone sound. It was like static, like the noise between radio stations. Then something growled in the receiver. Will dropped the telephone. He backed away from the kitchen table. He bumped into a chair. His eyes moved to the window. Something was outside. He could not see it, but he could feel it. Will ran out the back door, across the grass, and into the small wooden shed at the end of the garden. He pulled the door shut and pushed the lock with shaking hands. Inside the shed, it was dark and smelled of grass and petrol. His father's old tools hung on the walls. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. Will pulled the cord. The bulb flickered. Once, twice. Then, the light died. Outside the shed, the darkness seemed to breathe. The air grew very cold. The wooden walls of the shed began to shake, gently at first, then harder. The lock on the door bent inward. Will stepped back until his back touched the far wall. He looked up. His eyes were wide. Something pushed through the wall. The wall was solid wood. But whatever was there came through it like the wood was not really there at all. Like the wall was just a picture. Will opened his mouth to scream, but the darkness swallowed him. Chapter 4. Joyce comes home. Joyce Byers was tired. She worked at the general store in town, and the shifts were long. When she got home, she dropped her bag by the door and walked straight to the kitchen. She filled a glass of water and drank it standing at the sink. Then she noticed that Will's bed was empty. His school bag was on the floor. His shoes were by the door. Joyce walked through the house, calling his name. "Will! Will, honey, are you here?" No answer. She looked in the garden. She looked in the shed. The shed door was open. Inside, a light bulb hung still. Nothing else. Joyce stood in the cold garden and told herself there was a simple explanation. He was at a friend's house. He forgot to call. He was 12 years old. He was fine. She went inside and called Mike Wheeler's house. Mike answered on the first ring. He had not been asleep. "Mrs. Byers?" Mike's voice was full of worry. "What's wrong? Is Will okay?" "That's what I'm calling to ask you," said Joyce. Her voice was careful. "He's not here. Did he leave with you boys?" "He left on his bike, same time as the rest of us." A pause. "Mrs. Byers, his bike wasn't in front of your house when I went past?" Joyce went back to the front garden. Will's bike was not there. "No," she said. "It's not here." She stood in the cold dark and felt the first real wave of fear move through her. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Thank you, Mike." She put down the telephone and dialed the police station. Chapter 5. Chief Hopper. Jim Hopper was sitting in his car outside the police station. He was eating a breakfast pastry and drinking cold coffee from a paper cup. The radio was on. He was not really listening to it. He was not really thinking about very much at all. That was how he spent most of his time now. Not really thinking, not really feeling, just passing through the days one at a time. He had not always been like this, but some things happened to a person that changed them. And Hopper had been changed. His radio crackled. "Chief?" Got a call from a Joyce Byers on Mirkwood Road. Her son didn't come home last night. Hopper pressed the button. How old's the kid? 12? How long's he been missing? A pause. She says since late last night. Hopper sighed. He finished the last of his coffee. Probably just sleeping at a friend's place. Tell her we'll send someone out this morning. She says she's already called his friends. Nobody's seen him. Hopper set down his cup. He sat very still for a moment. Then he started the engine. "Tell her I'm coming myself," he said. Chapter 6. The Morning at School. The school bus arrived at Hawkins Middle School just after 7:30. Students moved through the hallways in loud, crowded groups. Locker doors banged. Teachers shouted. The smell of chalk dust and cold air filled the corridors. Mike Wheeler walked with Dustin and Lucas. He kept looking at the door. He kept waiting for Will to walk in. "Have you tried calling him again?" asked Dustin. He was holding his bag straps with both hands, the way he always did when he was nervous. 7 times, said Mike. Nobody answers. He probably fell asleep and forgot, said Lucas. Lucas was practical. He did not like to worry without a reason. You know how his mom works the late shift sometimes. Maybe she wasn't home? He would have called, said Mike. Maybe his phone is broken. Lucas? What? He would have called. Lucas looked at Mike's face and said nothing more. Their first class was science. Mr. Clark wrote equations on the blackboard. Mike stared at the door. Will's seat was empty. At lunch, the 3 boys sat together. Their trays of food went mostly untouched. Should we tell a teacher? Dustin asked quietly. Tell them what? Said Lucas. That our friend didn't come to school? They'll just call his mom. His mom already knows, said Mike. The 3 boys looked at each other. None of them said what they were all thinking. Chapter 7. Jonathan. Jonathan Byers had driven through the night. He had gone to a city campus to drop off some paperwork. It was part of his plan to get a scholarship for university next year. He had told his mother he would be back in the morning. He drove his old car down the familiar roads of Hawkins as the sun came up over the flat fields. He was tired. He was cold. He was thinking about the photographs he had taken the day before. He liked photography. It was the way he looked at the world, through a lens, from a safe distance. When he pulled into the driveway, he saw the police car immediately. He turned off the engine and sat still for a second. Then he got out. Joyce was standing in the doorway. She looked like she had not slept. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red. Mom? Jonathan walked quickly across the grass. Mom, what happened? It's Will, she said. Her voice was very quiet. He didn't come home. Jonathan stopped walking. Something cold moved through him. What do you mean? What happened? His bike was found on Mirkwood Road, said the police officer standing near the car. He was a young officer. He looked uncomfortable. There were signs of a fall, but no sign of Will. Signs of a fall? Jonathan looked at his mother. Mom. Joyce reached out and held Jonathan's arm. Chief Hopper is going to help us, she said. She said it like if she said it clearly enough, she could make it be true. Jonathan put his arm around his mother. He looked out at the long, empty road in front of their house. His jaw was tight. His eyes were dry, but only because he was not the kind of person who cried in front of others. "We'll find him," he said. He said it to himself as much as to her. Chapter 8. Hopper Investigates. Hopper walked along Mirkwood Road slowly. His hands were in his jacket pockets. The morning was gray and cold. Dead leaves lay wet on the road. One of his officers, a young man named Callahan, walked beside him. Will's bike lay on its side near the edge of the road. One of the wheels was still slowly turning in the wind. The front light was cracked. Hopper crouched down and looked at the bike without touching it. Then he looked at the road around it. There were marks on the wet ground. A boy had fallen here. The leaves were disturbed. "The mom said he left a friend's house around 1 in the morning," said Callahan. He was reading from his notebook. "She said he'd done it before. It's about a mile from here." "Alone?" said Hopper. "I guess so, yeah." Hopper stood up. He looked down the long, dark road. Trees on both sides. No houses. No lights. "Get some more people out here," he said. "I want to walk the whole road." "Chief, kids wander off all the time. He probably—" "Get more people," Hopper said again. His voice was firm but calm. Callahan wrote something in his notebook. Hopper looked at the bike again. He thought about a 12-year-old boy on this road at 1 in the morning. He thought about the dark. He thought about how quiet it must have been. He did not like what he was thinking. Chapter 9. Nancy and Steve. Nancy Wheeler was in the school library at lunchtime. She was supposed to be studying. Instead, she was looking out of the window at the gray sky. She was 15. She had good marks and nice clothes. To most people at school, it looked like everything was going well for Nancy Wheeler. But Nancy spent a lot of time feeling like something was missing. She was not sure what. "Is this seat taken?" She looked up. Steve Harrington was standing next to her table. He was tall, with dark, carefully styled hair. He was smiling the way boys smile when they know they are handsome. Most girls at school talked about Steve Harrington a lot. Nancy had told herself she was not most girls. But she moved her bag off the chair next to her. Steve sat down. He put his books on the table, but he did not open them. He looked at Nancy. "You're Mike Wheeler's sister, right?" he said. "Yes," said Nancy. She looked back at her book. "I heard his friend didn't show up today," said Steve. He said it casually, like it was just something interesting to mention. "The little kid. The quiet one." "Will?" said Nancy. "His name is Will Byers." "Right," Steve nodded. "That's weird, right? Just not showing up." "I'm sure there's an explanation," said Nancy. She turned a page she hadn't actually read. Steve was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you doing anything this weekend?" Nancy looked up again. Steve was still smiling. She told herself she was not going to smile back. She smiled back. Chapter 10. Joyce Waits. Joyce sat on the sofa in her living room. She had a cup of tea in her hands. It had gone cold an hour ago. She had not noticed. The telephone was on the cushion beside her. She kept looking at it, willing it to ring. Every few minutes she picked it up to check it was working. Every time, she heard the dial tone and put it back down. Jonathan came in from the kitchen and sat beside her. He had been talking to the police outside. He had a piece of paper in his hand, a photograph of Will, printed in black and white. "I made some copies," he said quietly. "I'm going to put them up in town this afternoon." Joyce looked at the photograph. It was Will's school photo from last year. He was smiling. She pressed her lips together. "Chief Hopper said they're going to search the woods as well as the road," said Jonathan. He said it's standard. He was taken, said Joyce. Jonathan stopped. Mom, something happened to him, Jonathan. Her voice did not shake. It was low and clear, like she had already moved past fear into a harder place. A mother knows. Something happened to my boy. Jonathan sat back. He put the paper with Will's photograph face down on his knee. He looked at the wall. We'll find him, he said. The same words as before. But this time, his voice was quieter. Chapter 11. The Search Begins. After school, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas gathered outside the main doors. The other students walked past them, talking and laughing. The three boys stood apart from the crowd. The police are searching the woods, said Dustin. He had been listening to his radio during lunch. The local station had mentioned Will's name. They found his bike on Mirkwood Road. Mike stared at the ground. Mike, said Lucas carefully, if the police are already looking. We know those woods better than they do, said Mike. He looked up. His eyes were determined. We've ridden every trail in those woods 100 times. We know every path. It's going to get dark, said Lucas. Then we go before it gets dark. Your mom is going to call our moms. Then we'll be back before our moms find out. Lucas looked at Dustin. Dustin shrugged. He's right, said Dustin. We know those woods. Lucas was quiet for a moment. He kicked at a small stone with his foot. He was the practical one, the careful one. But he was also loyal. And Will was his friend. We have 2 hours before dark, he said finally. We take our bikes, we take torches, and we stay together. If we find nothing by the time the light goes, we turn back. Agreed, said Mike. They went to get their bikes. Chapter 12. Into the Woods. The trees on Mirkwood Road were dark and close together. Dead leaves covered the ground. The three boys rode their bikes slowly down the side of the road. The police tape around Will's abandoned bike was yellow and bright. It stood out against the gray afternoon like something from another world. This is where he fell, said Mike. He stopped his bike and looked at the ground. He tried not to think about Will on this road in the dark, alone. The police already searched this part, said Lucas. He was scanning the tree line. We should go deeper. They left the road and rode into the trees. The path was rough. Roots broke the ground and made the bikes bounce. Branches reached low over their heads. Dustin shone his torch between the trees. The yellow beam moved across trunks and leaves and darkness. Will! Mike called. His voice went out into the woods and came back to him, smaller and thinner. The trees seemed to swallow the sound. Will! Nothing. Only the wind and the creak of old branches. He's not here, said Lucas. He said it gently. He did not want to say it, but he thought it was important to say the truth. Keep going, said Mike. They rode deeper into the trees. The light in the sky above them was turning from gray to orange. The dark was coming. Chapter 13. The Girl in the Rain. They found her near the road that ran along the edge of the woods. It was a wider road, with a diner on one side and fields on the other. The sky had opened up while the boys rode, and now cold rain was falling hard. She was standing on the side of the road. She was wet through. She wore a simple hospital gown, thin, white, completely wrong for the weather. Her head was shaved close to the skin. There were cuts and bruises on her arms. She stood very still, looking at the road, like she did not know where to go, like she had forgotten that things like cold and rain existed. Dustin saw her first. He braked so suddenly that his wheels skidded in the wet gravel. "Guys!" Mike and Lucas stopped beside him. The girl turned her head and looked at them. Her eyes were large and dark. They were the eyes of someone who had been frightened for a very long time. The boys looked back at her. Nobody moved. "Are you okay?" Mike asked. The girl said nothing. "Are you hurt?" asked Dustin. She looked down at her arms, as if the question had made her notice the cuts for the first time. Lucas leaned toward Mike. "We should call Hopper," he whispered. "Look at her," Mike whispered back. "She's freezing." "She could be dangerous." "She's soaking wet, Lucas. She weighs about as much as one of us. That doesn't mean she's not—" "Hey," Mike spoke directly to the girl. He got off his bike and took a step toward her. "My name is Mike. What's your name?" The girl looked at him. She opened her mouth. She seemed to be working very hard to find the words, like someone who had not spoken in a long time. 11, she said. The boys looked at each other. "Your name is 11? Said Dustin. She looked at him. Then she lifted her arm and showed them the inside of her wrist. On the pale skin, in black ink, was the number 011. "Oh," said Dustin. The rain fell harder around them. "Okay," said Mike. He turned to the other two. "She's coming with us." Chapter 14. The basement. They brought her to Mike's house through the back door. It was dark now. The rain had stopped. The lights in the house were on upstairs, but Mike knew his parents were at the front of the house. He knew the way to the basement without making a sound. The three boys and the girl they called 11 came quietly down the stairs into the warm, bright basement. 11 stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked around. She turned slowly, taking in everything: the table, the game pieces, the posters on the walls, the beanbag chairs. "You can sit down," said Mike. He pointed to one of the chairs. 11 sat on the edge of it carefully, like she was not sure the chair would hold her. Dustin opened a bag of snacks from the shelf above the television. He held them out to her. 11 stared at the bag. "It's food," said Dustin. "You eat it." He put one in his mouth to show her. Something changed in 11's face. She took the bag from him and ate quickly, not carefully or politely, but like someone very hungry. "Okay. Wow," said Dustin. Lucas pulled Mike to the side. His voice was very low. "We don't know anything about her. We don't know where she came from. We don't know what happened to her. Mike, those marks on her arms—" "I know," said Mike. "What are we going to do?" Mike looked at the girl. She had finished the snacks. She was looking at the Dungeons and Dragons figures on the table. She picked up the small plastic Demogorgon and looked at it closely. Then she put it down again, gently. "She needs help," said Mike. "We help her." "And Will?" A silence. "She might know something," said Mike quietly. "She was out there, in those woods, near Mirkwood Road." He looked at Lucas. "She might know what happened." Lucas thought about this. "Tomorrow," he said finally. "Tomorrow we ask her. Tonight, she stays here. We don't tell anyone yet." Dustin nodded slowly. Upstairs, a door opened and closed. Mike's mother called down the stairs. "Mike, are you home? Dinner is ready." "Be right up," Mike called back. He looked at 11. She was looking back at him. Her eyes were calm now, but in the depths of them was something troubled and deep. "You'll be safe here," said Mike. He said it simply, without thinking too much about whether it was a promise he could keep. 11 looked at him for a long moment. Then, very quietly, she said, "Safe." like the word was something new, like she was trying it out for the very first time. Chapter 15. The Lights. That night, Joyce could not sleep. She sat in Will's bedroom with a blanket around her shoulders. The room smelled like him, like pencils and old paper and something sweet. His drawings were pinned on the walls, castles and forests and dragons. She looked at each one. She thought about the first day he had shown her a drawing. He was 4 years old. She had put it on the fridge. She still had it somewhere. The phone rang. Joyce ran to the kitchen. "Will!" she breathed. The line crackled. There was that strange sound again, like static, like electricity moving through wire. But under the static, faint and breaking up, she heard something, a breathing sound, a sound that could have been, that she was sure was, her son's voice. "Will! Will! I can hear you! Say something!" The static grew louder. Then the lights in the kitchen flickered. On, off, on. The bulb above her head flashed twice, and then went dark. All through the house, the lights pulsed. Like something was moving through the electricity itself. Like something was trying to push through from somewhere far away. Joyce pressed the telephone against her ear so hard that it hurt. "Will," she whispered, "I hear you. I don't know where you are, but I'm here. I'm right here, and I'm going to find you. Do you hear me? I'm going to find you." The line went dead. The lights came back on. Joyce stood alone in her kitchen. The phone was warm and quiet in her hand, and she made herself a promise that she would not stop. Not for anything. Not for anyone. She would bring her son home. Epilogue. What was coming? Across the town of Hawkins, the night was quiet. In the Wheeler basement, a strange girl with dark eyes sat in the dark and waited. She had waited in dark places before. She knew how to be still. She knew how to be patient. But this darkness felt different. It was not the darkness of the place she had come from. This darkness was just night. Ordinary, quiet, human night. She pressed her fingers against the floor. She could feel the warmth of the house above her. She could hear, faintly, the sounds of a family, a television, footsteps, a door. She had not felt warmth like that in a long time. In the police station, Hopper sat at his desk. A map of Hawkins was spread out in front of him. He had drawn a circle around Mirkwood Road. He had drawn another around the woods east of it. He had drawn a third around the Hawkins National Laboratory, a large government building on the edge of town. He sat back and looked at the 3 circles. He chewed the end of his pen. He had been a police officer for a long time. He had learned to trust certain feelings. And the feeling he had now, looking at that map, was a feeling he did not like. It was the feeling that something had begun. Something large. Something that was not going to end easily. In her house on the edge of town, Joyce Byers stood in the garden and looked up at the sky. The stars were out now. The rain had stopped. "Will," she said, very quietly, to the sky. The lights in the house behind her flickered once, and from somewhere that was not quite in this world, something heard her.